morning, Atlantis. That song was for Danny.
Hey, Shane, good morning. It's good to hear your voice. I want to thank the folks at the University of Texas at El Paso, and go Miners.
And Sonny, we need to congratulate you this morning as well. You're setting records every second you're up there.
It's just I'm in the right place at the right time, and it's just an honor to be up here. I tell you what, even when the station has little problems, it's just a beautiful, wonderful place to live. So you guys, thanks for all your support.
Okay, big picture regarding what we're trying to do with O2 here is maximize our dock time capability, essentially, in support of the further investigation of the SM computer anomaly. And where we are with that is we have enough O2 to guarantee at least one extra docked day. However, there is a little more O2 available, not enough to give us a second day. However, there is enough that we'd like to put the O2 transfer in work today. And I think we're going to move over about 55 pounds of O2. To do that, we have a cryo config onboard shuttle that needs to be completed first. And then when that's done, we can put the flight plan O2 transfer steps in work as written in today's execute package. How copy?
Okay, Hawk, we copy. We were setting up to do this in about 15 minutes. And Pat will take the cryo config on air-to-ground 2 when you're ready to pass it, and then at 1600 we'll be ready to do the O2 transfer.
Okay, that's most excellent. We'll get to Pat in a moment. The other big picture note I have for you is we can inform you that your TPS on orbiter has been cleared for entry.
Okay, that's great news, Houston. Thanks a lot.
You bet.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News. Let's start with Sonny. You broke a record today. What did you do to celebrate?
Had a lot to do up here today. We're still working on the Russian computers, as well as working on getting the hydrogen vent valve installed on the inside. So I think I had a couple wrenches in my hand, and that was pretty much how I celebrated today. But everybody here said congratulations, and I just want to reiterate, I was just in the right place at the right time. There's many people who could have done it before me, and many who will probably surpass that record in the future. But thank you.
And I have a question for Clay Anderson. Clay, you sort of gotten a crash course in space station maintenance this week. How's it been going?
I think I'm hanging in there. It's kind of reminds me of one of my first swimming lessons when I just got tossed in the water and they told me to kind of survive. So everybody's been very helpful, Sonny especially, and we're going to get through all this just like NASA always does.
And then for Oleg and for Fyodor, gentlemen, how is the troubleshooting going on those Russian computers?
So, in the first time it was too terrible for us because we don't understand about everything. Every computer is computer, yes, and nobody understands very well about what is thinking and what happened in next time. But now we fix this problem and everybody in Shuttle guys, and we are very happy about this situation. I hope in MCC Houston, MCC Moscow, everybody is very glad for this situation. And we fixed this, and we continued our flight. It's good news.
Thank you. This is Tarek Malik from Space.com and Space News, and my first question is for Commanders Yurchikin and Sturko. This last week has been kind of a roller coaster for some of us on the ground here, watching you wrangle solar arrays and the computer glitches and whatnot. How tough has it been, to have a docked mission as well as kind of wrangling all of these challenges?
Of course, the shuttle flight is very interesting flight. Yeah, it's like expedition flight, but for very short time. For example, in our expedition, we are flying with Oleg about 2 months, and we had only 2 EVAs. Shuttle coming soon, and now had 3 EVAs. Tomorrow we'll have 4 EVAs. It's expressive, very expressive time. Of course, we are very busy, but every day we check, every evening we ask each other, okay, it's done for this day, all tasks done, and we are happy for every day. We are happy for our shuttle mission because for me, for example, this is new. I again met Atlantis, my first space vehicle. It was Atlantis. For everybody, it's very good news. For Sunny, for example, she returned home. For Clay, he began his first flight. For me and Oleg, it's the first docking with shuttle in our mission. For Shuttle, it's his mission, and for 4, I think, Shuttle guys, it's first flight. It's good day, very busy, very sometimes terrible, sometimes difficult, but very nice time for everybody of us.
Thank you. And for Jim, you know, you have 4 spacewalks for the mission. We've seen the station get a new starboard side, new solar arrays. How does it feel to kind of be stepping out of the Quest airlock? You know, you helped install it, and here's this machine that is growing in nature.
Well, the first impression was looking out that door and seeing the Earth go by 200 miles below on the tail of the orbiter, and that was pretty impressive. And then the really big impressive moment was being out at the end of the truss as we were finishing up some of our work, getting it ready to unfurl the solar arrays, and looking off to one side and seeing the horizon disappear in 3 directions, and then turning around and seeing this massive piece of equipment behind us that we've been building over the last few years, and looking at it and going, this is what we've done. And it was a pretty impressive moment, you know, just to be able to sit back and look at that, and look at the engineering feats that we've accomplished between Russia and the rest of the international partners and ourselves.
Hi, everyone. It's Bill Harwood with CBS News. Let me ask Oleg Kotov a question, please. Fyodor has answered this already, but let me ask you. The effort to get the computers going struck everyone on the ground is really something on the part of the Russian engineering team on the ground, and of course you guys had to carry out their strategy. What was your sense of all of this, and how did it go? Were you worried in the middle of this? Were you confident all the time that you would get this resolved? And what might you say to the engineers on the ground who figured all this out?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because at the very beginning we were a little bit worried about the status of the computer, because, you know, this happened first time when a whole set of Russian computers crashed at once. So, but we're sure that our ground team, as our FCC Moscow with Houston support, can troubleshoot this problem, and it's become true. You know, as yesterday and actually this morning, we've finished our troubleshooting activity, and we performed this task, and now we have a good set of whole computers on our station, and station again looks pretty good and in good shape, and we're ready to continue our mission and path our station to the next mission sometime. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sonny, let me ask you a question about that as someone who's leaving but has great familiarity, obviously. Is there a message in all of this to folks who don't pay a lot of attention on a daily basis to the station, the complexity of it, or the challenge of building and maintaining a machine like that in orbit? Any thoughts you have to share, would appreciate. Thank you. Any thoughts you have to share, would appreciate.
Okay, Bill. Well, I think my overall thought is, you know, we take spaceflight for granted, and it still is pretty darn dangerous. You know, we're living in an environment that's it's not really friendly for humans to be, as you've noticed by watching the spacewalks. The spacesuits aren't a joke. They're pretty heavy-duty equipment, and the equipment that we use out there to move around and to do the jobs that we're doing out there is pretty serious. And likewise, the vehicle that we're living in here, it's you know, it's not just a tourist vacation place. It's a place that's living, working like a ship, and we're the ones who keep it going. We're the ones who make sure the toilet works, make sure we have air to breathe and stuff like that. So, you know, it's a serious place, and we're doing serious business and serious science up here. So I think that's the one message. It's space isn't you know, just for tourists. It's actually, we're actually getting a lot of work done up here.
Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. A question for Sunny first. As you prepare to come home, what have you physically packed to bring home with you? What are you leaving on the station of yourself? And in a larger sense, what's the spiritual message you take away from living on a space station for 6 months?
Real quickly about stuff that I'm taking home and leaving. Well, you know, 117 was pretty packed up. The truss was really heavy, so they don't have a lot of storage space on the mid-deck for just personal items. So I'm leaving actually quite a bit of stuff here. We're allowed some stuff to come back on 13A.1, the next shuttle flight. So some of my personal stuff most of my personal stuff is coming home on the next flight, but I'm bringing home a couple shirts just for a good memory of the flight that brought me up. And Expedition 14, Expedition 15, and now 117. And, of course, a picture of my dog. I might have to stay here on the space station. Might have to hide it for some future crew to find. A reflection on my time up here in space for 6 months, you know, it's... I think the biggest thing that I noticed was how amazing the human body is, how it is able to adapt and be able to function in such a different environment, in actually a fairly vicious environment like I just described in the last question. I don't even feel like floating around is anything different than on Earth when you're walking around. It feels very natural. It feels like what you should be doing, and it's amazing how quick your body can adapt. We're doing a lot of things up here science-wise to help us go on to understanding how we're going to build a space station potentially on the moon, and then how we're going to build and live for extended periods of time someplace else, and then we can learn how to potentially go on to Mars. So this is a necessary thing, a necessary step in our future plan for the space program.
And for CJ, working off something Sunny just said, somewhere stowed inside the locker on Atlantis is a 400-year-old remnant of the first permanent English settlement in North America. As someone who's been to the ISS a few times, both at its beginning and now as it nears completion, in your opinion, does the space station represent the same type of pivotal shift in human migration?
I believe it does. It's not going to be a quick migration, though. You know, you mentioned the time frame of the 400 years. Hopefully, within our lifetimes, we'll see what Sunny was just describing of a colony on the moon where people actually live there. They don't just visit there. They live and work there. And I think we'll hopefully see exploration beyond that, too. So there's all good goals.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today. I guess for CJ, I'm wondering if you have any real concern about re-entering with the OMS pod blanket in the condition it's in. A lot has been made of it down here, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are now that the repairs have been affected.
Todd, I think you heard a lot about the team that developed the repairs, and I was inside with Pat Forrester yesterday when Danny Olivas did the repairs, so we had a very good view on the WVS system of the work site, and I have a lot of confidence in Danny's work, so I think that we're going to be in a good shape.
For Sonny Williams, I'm wondering what you might remember as maybe the biggest highlight of your expedition, and what you're looking forward to most about coming back to Earth.
I think one of the highlights, of course, were the spacewalks that I participated in. You know, when you're outside and the only thing between you and space is your visor, that's pretty special. But I think the biggest moment for me was actually when Expedition 14 left, and I was feeling like I was the only American up here and hopefully representing our country pretty well and all the good that is represented with the United States.
Thanks. And for Clay Anderson, 15 times I think you applied for the astronaut corps, and you finally got in, and now you're finally on orbit. What are your first impressions of spaceflight? Is it everything you've anticipated?
place to be. It's an incredible place to live, and I'm sure that those thoughts will be even more cemented in my brain as I go through my tour up here with Fyodor and Oleg. You know, perseverance pays off, and I'm very proud to be here, and I'm proud to represent the United States and the programs that NASA and the Russian space program have put forth, and all of our international partners. So I'm just like Sonny. I want to do a great job, and I want this to be a very memorable occasion.
It's Mark Carreau from the Houston Chronicle for Sonny Williams. Are you prepared to return to gravity, and how do you think you'll do when you start to readjust? Thanks.
Well, I'm a little bit nervous about that. To be honest with you, I've never done this before, so I don't really know how everything's going to work out. But I think you guys know that I've been working out pretty hard up here. I was a little bit sad we couldn't use the TVIS for a day or so because of the computer program problem, and so we had to sort of shut down activities in the SM, and I was a little bit worried about that because that's one of the best things I hear for you to prepare you for getting back to working on Earth again. But I think I'll do okay. I've worked as hard as I think as anybody can work up here physically, so we'll just see how it goes.
Juan Lozano, the Associated Press. I guess for anybody who wants to answer, if anybody could talk about as far as what kind of the computer problems this past week, what kind of impact did it have on sort of the quality of life on the space station? And also, was there ever any point anybody was really worried that the problems couldn't be resolved?
Well, I can speak just from the crew on Atlantis. The first thing we noticed was the amount of effort and work that the expedition crew was doing over here. I think that long into the night while some of us were sleeping, they were in here working on the computers, and for that we are very appreciative. We had to make a few adjustments as far as the amount of power that we used, but nothing that we couldn't complete the mission with. And some of the things that we turned off that would help clear the air, some of those things we noticed. But for the most part, it was easy for us, but the work, the real burden was on the expedition crew.
Jeff Franks with Reuters. I'm just curious, after the problems on the station this week, do you think that people should be more confident or less confident in the safety of the space station? Also, second question, in terms of the logistics question, just transfer, are you guys ahead, behind on the transfer of cargo due to the work you've had to do on the computers, or no?
For the first question, I would say definitely be more confident. It just shows you, given any problem that we face in this environment or situation, that we can overcome it. And we've done that many times, and we just did it again. It's a wonderful testament to the folks at NASA. As for transfer, JR is just pretty much done with that. We are very close to finishing that up, and we're looking forward to getting that complete.
David Waters from Central Florida News 13 for Danny Olivas. Tell us what you were thinking when you were out on the end of the robot arm. You were doing these repairs with a medical kit. How did that feel to you?
Well, you know, I had a great deal of confidence going into it because I knew that the procedures which had been developed, I knew a lot of the people on the ground who developed them because I had an opportunity to work with them as we worked through some of the repair efforts after Columbia. And the solution they came up with was certainly in line with what my thoughts were on how to proceed. And so, you know, everything had been done in such a fashion to really make it as foolproof as possible. And so, you know, I think the proof is in the pudding that a fool like myself could, you know, get that done and make it meet the requirements. So I was feeling very, very good about it.
And for Sonny Williams, you've all been dealing with ISS computer issues. How hard has that made it playing catch-up?
Well, these two wonderful gentlemen right around me have, like mentioned before, have really worked day and night to make sure the computer problem hasn't really impacted any of the mission that's going on or really any of our daily life up here. They've done a tremendous effort. Like I mentioned, there's a couple things that we couldn't use, like the treadmill and stuff, just because of the power loads and the heating in that part of the space station, but that was it, and that was maybe for 24 hours. It really hasn't impacted us at all.
Peter King with CBS News Radio. And for Sonny, while you still have the mic, I know you've talked about being in the right place at the right time on setting the record, but a couple things. First, were you aware that this is also the anniversary of Valentina Tereshkova's flight? And second of all, would you like to go back, and how long a respite or a decompression time would you like before you would go back to the station?
To be very honest with you, I didn't realize it was the anniversary, but wow, that's pretty neat. I'm pretty honored to share a similar date in history as Valentina Tereshkova. That's pretty amazing. I would love to come back. Like I have mentioned before in the past, it's a beautiful place to live and work. I mean, what a great view of our home planet, and lots of good science that we're doing up here. So, you know, I would absolutely love to come back. But, you know, there's a long list of astronauts ahead of me that need to get up here and fly it and experience it for themselves, so we can go back and tell our families and our friends all over the world and country how beautiful it is. So we'll see. We'll see how long. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years. Maybe I'll come back. We'll see.
For Steve Swanson, with repair and retraction done by the other EVA team, the average observer may think tomorrow's tasks are a little bit mundane and ordinary compared to the more spectacular stuff. Wondering if you feel bad about not getting a crack at doing those repairs, and tell us a little bit about why tomorrow's EVA is going to be so important.
No, I don't feel bad. Every EVA is good, a good EVA. And they did a great job the other day, and I'm really proud of them. For tomorrow, we will. Our biggest task, I think, is to get the alpha joint open and ready to go, so that the solar rays can track the sun, and we can also then have the MT. We'll clear the path for that, and have that be able to go out as far as it needs to go for the next mission, so they can put on the next piece. Those are the two big things I believe we need to accomplish tomorrow, and those are big keystones in the building of the space station.
And my last question, this is for Commander Sturckow. You know, Sonny kind of answered this a little bit, but I'd like to have your perspective on it. You know, you started this mission expecting perhaps one set of problems with the retract and that sort of thing, and instead you wound up with a whole lot of other problems that you all met head on. I'm just wondering your feelings on the lessons learned about handling life in space day to day and the things that come up.
I think it's all a good example of what the NASA and the RSA can do working together, and once we get the international partners living up here, I think we can accomplish great things in space. Let me just let our pilot, Lee Archambault, comment also on how well the mission's been handled and some of the impacts from his perspective.
You know, to this point, we've had 3 of our, what was going to turn out to be 4 EVAs, and things have gone very, very well. We had a real complex EVA yesterday that also included operations of 2 different robotic arms during the same EVA. So we're very, very happy with how the technical aspects have been going. But from a first-time flyer rookie perspective, the technical aspects aren't really the biggest challenge for me. The biggest challenge is just learning how to adapt to zero gravity and learn to live in space and get by in space. Just even the mundane things like transiting back and forth from the station to the shuttle, learning how to eat your food, just getting around without gravity is oftentimes even a bigger challenge than a lot of the technical things we do, because we get a lot of training on the technical aspects of the mission. But it's for the first-time flyers particularly, adapting to zero gravity provides a unique challenge that can't be practiced anywhere.
Eric Solomon, Channel 48 News in Huntsville, Alabama. Just a quick couple of questions for you guys. Most of my questions will be related to Marshall, and my first one goes for the shuttle crew. If you guys could just talk a little bit about the launch. How was the launch and the ride-up?
Well, I can tell you, I was sitting on the mid deck with Jim Riley and Clay Anderson, and I will tell you, it's a spectacular ride. You know, even though we didn't have much of a view, the mid-deck lockers don't make for a very great, panoramic, scenic view to remember. But certainly the ride was a lot of shaking, a lot of vibration, and you could certainly feel every phase of the flight. It was a smooth ride. We got here without a problem, and so we certainly did enjoy it.
Just to follow on, I was on the flight deck and got to see out the windows, but I have to agree with Danny. It was quite amazing. It was an amazing ride. It did shake, and the view, though, was tremendous. You could see, as we turned over, you could see the horizon coming out the windows, and it was quite a view.
All right, and my next question is for Sonny. First off, love the hair. I wanted to ask you about the Payload Operations Center and how is it working with them, and how's that been going for you guys?
They're awesome. They're great. So we have our daily planning conference where we're talking to them every day, and then we're working here in the lab doing science experiments and interacting with them on a daily basis, sometimes hourly basis, depending on the science experiment we're doing. And the folks there are just great. They're awesome. They're professional. They're always there to answer questions. They're in touch with all of the investigators all over the world and are able to answer any questions we have. And I really appreciate working with them, and I'm going to sincerely miss doing the science and being able to talk with them, particularly on Saturday morning.
All right, and just for anyone with the space station, if you could talk about the oxygen generation system that went up last July. During the last spacewalk, you all installed a special vent. Tell us about how the procedures went with that and what impact that will have.
As the International Space Station ramps up to truly become international by bringing in some of our partners, we need to have other capabilities, dual capabilities to some of those that are provided by the Russians in the Russian segment. One of those is to generate oxygen on board, and Jim Riley did an excellent job installing and kind of readapting vents that we already had on the station now to allow us to vent hydrogen to space. So he did his part yesterday successfully, and today we were up inside the cubby holes with wrenches and beating things up and trying to get the inside part attached so that we can finally test the OGS, we call it, the oxygen generation system, and make sure that we can generate O2. And that's just a sign of some of the things to come as we ramp up to new modules in the future and new partners and new crew members. We need to have additional capabilities.
All right, and my last question will be for anyone to answer. It's obviously the Space Camp's 25th anniversary. They just graduated their 500th camper. Could someone talk about how important the public interest is in the space program?
Well, more specifically about Space Camp, anytime you can get kids interested in the sciences, math, and technology, the things that are most in demand in our world as fast as it's changing is definitely a good thing. And Space Camp has that ability to fire that spark in kids like almost no other program around. So the fact that they're around and they're doing it today is a great thing, because we need more engineers, and NASA needs them every day. So anytime they get into the university and come our way, we'd love to talk to them. So we're definitely in favor of those kinds of programs, and we think it's a great thing if they get their 500th of many thousands out this year.
Atlantis ISS, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Okay, this is the 117 video for Flight Day 9, and you can see Danny is making a burrito or a breakfast taco here. He's got sausage and scrambled eggs and a lot of hot sauce and a little bit of mustard on there. And it looked really delicious. Of course, you can see it's a challenge in space getting all that to stick together, and he did a really good job with it. Here's Swanee. Again, this is in the post-sleep period, just sending a message home to his family. You can see it's interesting because he's hanging on the ceiling when he does that. Of course, we like to jump on the bike first thing, get a little morning bike ride in. Chance to exercise on the the resistive exercise device over in the station node. One of the first things we set up was an oxygen transfer to take shuttle oxygen and put it into the ISS airlock O2 tanks. That involves some commanding on the computers. And then Oleg and myself hooked up some hoses in the airlock and then through some valves that are in the shuttle docking system in the vestibule. Hooking up of the oxygen transfer is high pressure oxygen can be very flammable, so we're very careful. We wear surgical gloves when we actually make the connections. Right there, we're just inspecting the valves. Of course, it's a little dark in some areas, so it's always good to illuminate with a flashlight to make sure that crew member's not throwing an incorrect switch. Danny translating through the lab area. You can see the crew has adapted well to the zero-G environment. It's a little tricky translating through the station. Make sure you don't kick any of the expensive equipment that's hanging around on the walls.
This is JR, and here's Swanee doing the same thing. We're a little bit heading for the airlock, and these guys are setting up all their equipment for the EVA that they're going to do tomorrow. And here comes Pat doing his Army flip.
Right now, this is Clay, and I'm checking the pressures. We've set up a system now that JR installed the hydrogen vent valve on the outside of the station for our oxygen generation system. My job on the inside was to set up all the connections and complete the work that Sonny and Mike Lopez Alegria did before.
Here's Pat on the right and Steve Swanee on the left, and these guys are doing their prep for the EVA for tomorrow. They're getting their helmets ready, putting some anti-fog inside there so that the visors stay clear. And here's CJ and I packing up some of the gear that's coming home, or Brew, I'm sorry, packing up some of the gear that's going to be coming home with us. That's some of the equipment that we took off the outside of station on EVA 1. And there's Brew, and he's working on one of the laptops in the station.
see Fyodor and Oleg, and they are doing further on troubleshooting in the service module, working on the computers and using the scope meter to try to identify where there might be some of that electrical interference that I was talking about that me and Swanee were reconnecting the electrical connection for.
And that's me, Clay, zipping up inside the station to work on the valves that we talked about for the hydrogen vent that JR had put on the outside. We also are working with fittings that need to be cleaned, and we're dealing with some cleaning right now before we actually hook up the final connections. Once we do that and everything's connected, the ground control team will begin to open various valves and check for pressure integrity along the way to make sure that when we finally open all the connections that we need, we can vent hydrogen to space. And here's Pat and Swanee again, Pat on the left, Swanee on the right, and we're doing a procedure review, walking through all the steps for what they're going to do tomorrow on the EVA, and their primary task is to remove all the equipment now that will allow the SARGs to rotate, and so the solar arrays that we've just installed out there will be able to track the sun, and it will also open up the translation path for the mobile transporter for the big arm.
This is just finishing up some O2 transfer with JR up on the Orca pump, and we're commanding the RPC to open. That's going to disconnect electrical power. After we did that, then we deconfigured the hoses, the O2 transfer hoses that I mentioned earlier. And then the cooling hose, I think you're going to see here in a minute. We're going to go ahead and disconnect that from the Orca pump and put it back in the crew lock to provide cooling and ventilation for the crew in there tomorrow when they get set up for the EVA.
And here you can see Daniel Levis working with the crew, EVA crew tomorrow, Steve Swanson and Pat Forrester, getting them, putting them in bed in the airlock tonight, and that's where they're at right now, in their camp out overnight in the airlock. What you'll see next is Steve Swanson and Pat Forrester donning their masks for their pre-breathe, which lasts about 45 minutes.
There's Sunny packing up to go home. She says hi to Marcia. There's a note that Marcia personally wrote. Marcia Evans, she did a lot of bench reviews for this crew, and we'd like to thank her for all her support.
And here you can see Swanee and Pat with their masks on for a 45-minute pre-breathe, and after that they'll be camping